I'm gonna rascal about what I am doing currently and just like espouse it. So I'm going to need likely capture cards. I am going to need to put this GPU is going to go into my PC. Yellow. Okay, I have two PCs over there. I have this GPU is going to go into this PC, so I have a separate graphics card just dedicated towards doing recordings, so I don't get lag when I'm using my GPU, my better GPU, for multiple instances at the same time, like recording video and using any sort of 3D software or whatever really doesn't jive well. I'm gonna need some cameras, and what I'm going to do is have a capture card in a different PC, and with that capture card in a different PC, I then need to find a way to transmit this video output of the camera, so it is an input into the computer, but it's an output out of the computer, out of the camera. And then what it needs to do is then it needs to hook up and bring, but at the same time I want it to also, but then I have the other computer. The other computer might be the one that I will end up using as some sort or form of a virtualization method for transmitting into different websites all at the same time. I am creating a bot or an artificial system that can take control of a variety of tasks and probably some servers. I'm still trying to string everything I'm doing together. It is taking a lot of computation, mental computation, to figure out every piece of the puzzle. I want to have computers run against each other and perform human-like tasks. But there's like some pipeline and just certain parts of the equation that need to be okay and fulfilled. I already have some software that is basically does what it needs to do. I can fire it up if I want to right now. Let's see what it's gonna do. Where is it going to open? That's the question. Okay. So this is just a basic sorter. This isn't rocket science. So I have it on my screen here. It's a little large on the UI needs to be updated. It's a little large on my screen here. Okay. It doesn't. It has some components that are not really that difficult. I'm gonna put this. You know, it does currently do an. It takes an input of a file folder with a bunch of files in it, and then it iterates through it. It is currently renaming them. It doesn't necessarily need to rename them. Renaming them needs to be a certain feature of it, but it isn't the primary concern. The primary concern is that I have a bunch of software, but it doesn't do exactly what I want it to do, and it of course mainly doesn't do what I want it to do because it needs to take control of the software, and it needs to automate tasks of that software. And so I am going to create basically a virtual machine that can do the task that I normally do and do them automated. But I don't want to do it macro-ish, in a macro-ish way. Although I have macros, the problem with macros is that it takes control of the entire computer and again lacks features that I need to have in there, and doesn't take a whole bunch of stuff, and they might be closed source, or I need to get into the nitty-gritty of it. So I'm going to compile a bunch of software into one. Not all features are going to need to be in there. It's going to basically be like you have a 50. Well, no, it's not even going to be like that. I'm gonna treat certain software more like a pet package in which from which I need features like it, but usually, you know, you have software, you have 100 softwares that do macroing, and you have 100 softwares that do, it's just specific tasks that are also in other things that I need to have in that package, but that is then going to do it something entirely different, and the thing is just going to be like a tiny part of it. It might even be that I just need to execute that specific software and have it execute what I want it to do. One of the main things is something that I was doing not so long ago, which I have to do today, is that I have a problem with Photoshop. And I used to do this with the photos thing from Windows, but Windows is Windows, and you couldn't use Windows without them screwing up everything they do. I know on my old PC it still worked. I don't know whether that was it's been a while since I used it for it. My computer was becoming very slow, unlike any PC I've ever encountered. It's not like I can't open it, but if the Windows, the Explorer, there is something on that PC that makes that has always been there, that makes the Explorer slow down and duplicate itself. There's some bug in there that I probably should just reinstall Windows. But I don't want to, and I don't have any time, so I can turn it on, and then I can get to my drives and stuff like that, which is what I use it for. I use it as like a bay for my drives. so I don't need to have all my drives in this one, although I have now like a bunch of them in there right now. I want to completely keep that over an Ethernet connection. And the thing I have been doing here, I've already done some of it, is like I am cutting these according to a certain specification. I've already done this. I'm not gonna be doing this entirely. Why are you not doing what you're why are you... Wow. Okay, this is so I cut and then I cut again, and it's every time it's like a tiny bit different. So I'm going to write a Python script that is gonna cut, but I also need to have these do this based on facial recognition. I needed to recognize the faces, because that's the main component that I always use in this equation, is that I am using the face as a guide, and then it needs to be somewhat according to the golden ratio, and I do cut, make it smaller every time. But it also always needs to keep in mind the face mainly. As I am moving more towards detail in the body, it likely will also need to take shots of the body in and of itself, because currently this process might take me, even if it's just 10 minutes, it takes some time. And as I was saying with the photos one, for some reason Windows is currently refusing to output files for me adding a number after them on this PC. For some reason it doesn't do it here, which is happening in the photos one, and it's happening in Photoshop. It used to work, it's not working, and it's just, if I type in a name, it's replacing it instead of adding a number on top of it. I don't know why it's happening. It's a basic thing. It's not working in any of my software that I know of currently, which did have work on any of my other PCs. It's not working on this one. And then what I needed to do is I need the program, which I have here. I need this guy. This guy is basically going to become my entire terminal, and I'm going to just have it overtake my entire Windows. Maybe I could even replace Windows. I think it works on Linux. Maybe I just write my own OS and have it just completely compartmentalize. Looking if I can view. If I can have this guy be a PC on its own with just a specific function of auto generation, because I think at some point, you know, loading the entirety of Windows is going to be a pain in the ass. And it's going to, which is likely going to be a good one for Linux. It's going to, I don't know if it's actually like necessary to really reduce the resource use, but it's going to end up a server, so it's gonna be handy either way. I'm just still figuring out how I'm going to set everything up and what it's going to, how it's going to do. Integrate, I need the APIs of every website. I needed to, I have another piece of software here that's a randomizer that can scramble data and create random data, or not static noise, but like it can rearrange files randomly. It's not like, again, not rocket science. It's like, then it can upload to different platforms, and then it needs to know, oh, this has already been done on that platform, or it doesn't really matter necessarily. But that it can then pull those and then upload them randomly and identify where the data comes from, what the labels are, what it then needs to upload as, what the hashtags need to be, what it needs to say as a text, and that it can say that automatically without me having to like go through this laborious process of doing all that by myself. I'm going to have the computer do that by itself, but I'm also probably going to need to find a way to make parts of it or figure things out. How do you make a computer come up with code by itself? Or figure out, how would you write a piece of software that can log into websites and create accounts by itself and then manage those just by way of computation or automation, whatever? How much resources do you need for such a thing? How much and how often can you do that with like one? Of course, I don't need a billion accounts, but the accounting is like something for a later date. I don't want to make just a bot for making accounts. It would be, I would think it a funny experiment to make a computer that can build accounts and use yeah, GAN, so deep learning, to create a person and then start posting as that person, and then the person starts to evolve and it starts to identify attributes to that person, and that it would become a fully fledged person, but it's not really a person. So nobody really knows that it's not a person. It's just the computer generating images that are kind of the same. Of course, the initial image is a completely random human being that he generated, and he starts to post as that person, and then it becomes like, let's say, like an AI generated influencer or something like that, and then have that person have some, yeah, let's say that it's an artist, and then you have some GAN that creates art, and then it becomes an AI generated person that is creating AI art, and then you can set up, you know, if you can make 1 million of those accounts, you can make 1 million shops with their art, and if one of them hits, it's a hit, and then you're basically making money off of a AI generated person that it doesn't really exist, and that is selling their art, and then you can have a million, you can be as one person a million artists all at once. But there are some technical limitations in that it's likely going to be classical artists, because how do you create a computer that comes up with novel ideas? How do you create a computer that comes up with product design ideas? Of course, the product design in itself is just constraints, but how do you make it come up with novel products? Because the novel products are kind of like the goal. Because, you know, a novel painting isn't necessarily hard, especially if it's just an image of a person. It's not, again, it's not rocket science, it's not something novel, it's just another human being in a different style, or maybe some way of brushstrokes, whatever. That's not the most difficult part, but the actual novelty of making something that is useful is an interesting topic. But then the question becomes, why would you want to do that as an artificial person and not just acclaim that to yourself? I am gonna run GANs on myself because I have a green screen here, which I bought because I want to GANify myself, which again is why I need this pipeline of computers that are optimized for doing what I want them to do and can do this structured thing. I was talking about the program that I had written. I don't know. Okay, you're here. I'll go over it in a... I don't know if I need to go over it, but it's like pretty... Input folder non-automatic is me picking a folder. That is a non-automatic button, so as you might see, there's global after dev. Yeah. Then the input folder check. Is it that I didn't save? There was a problem. Let me check for the output. The terminal isn't saying, oh. Okay, that is why. Okay, there was a problem last time that I had overseen, and I had saved it, but I wasn't scrolled all the way down. Okay, so now what you can see is that I have this input folder and the output folder, and if I press the checked, it has been identified as the input or output folder. What's gonna happen here is that it's going to, so I can also just, if I'm working somewhere, I can just copy paste it here. This doesn't currently work, it's like an empty box. And the automatic execute input folder is just an input folder where it does the same thing as the non-automatic, but with the non-automatic I need to execute rename, which is this one. Is it doing it? It is getting stuck. Is this not the one that I was looking for? On the screen. So this is the folder where it has been output to. And the input folder, which was the default, is comprised of these, and in this folder it's called default. And in the, as you can see, I've done this quite a couple of times. This one has like some folders that are just basic checks so that I know where in the code, if something goes wrong, things are going wrong. So it puts these out. There's usually a text file here as well, the default text. And then it goes through this. But as you can see, it has renamed them and it has put the 1 in front, and then the .jpeg has been added as well. And I think, yeah, the -1 to whatever it is. But what should be happening, and I don't know why this did not happen currently, is that this progress bar needs to go up, because this one is going to, it might be, was it because I did the execute rename, or is it that I have to, it was because I put the execute rename, yes. Yes, okay. I'll try this again later with just the automatic execute, but I think what's happening here is this execute rename. I did not yet create this execute rename as a separate piece of, or in this case, it is a separate function. And because that is the case, it doesn't do the one that is in this input folder, which is a separate one. And this is the one that I started with. And because I started with that one, it is now executing that one. Well, it is not now executing this one. It executed this one. And this one is actually the one that is they can iterate through it, because it's an entirely written piece of code that I didn't entirely, and as you can see, this one is finishing, I think. The terminal just did something. Interesting, there's no... Could it be that it failed? That might be a problem if it did. I want to find out which one is the J one. I can't even see. Is it this J? Yes. Let me go to my D drive. D. Images out 6 input folder. Is there another one? 705. It did not do it this time. That is interesting. That needs to be worked on. This is likely the case because I'm doing it time, and because I'm doing it a second time, it is not fully executing it the way it should be. But if I'm going to test out the input folder. If I now do this one, it should, yes. So now it does do this one. So, oh, you're not seeing it actually. As you can see in the corner here, I just picked the execute automatic, and it's now iterating through it. And as you can see in the terminal next to the UI here is like I equals 100 progress 1 to, is going through it now, and you can now visually see that it's actually executing the code in the terminal. And then what I'm going to now, it's just further writing the code and implementing a whole bunch of packages, and have that one have the have everything be interconnected. I am currently at, I had the first spike in a while where I'm now transporting like 4 terabytes of data in a month, 5 maybe. I haven't checked. It was for a while, a week or two ago. Probably going to have to communicate a lot more with a lot of external computers and have them do whatever they are doing. There need to be certain programs and processes in the pipeline that make for randomization and certain things be or being executed. Um, so I can write. I'm not fully where I can fully explain the thing that where I'm going towards, but I know that I'm moving towards it. I don't know why there's a lag spike here. For some reason, dragging a node, one node was creating, okay, Photoshop Python cutter is what I went over. Blender integration, this is all written in Python, so I'm going to somehow involve Blender in the pipeline. But some of the problems there still is like making images or Blender stuff is still difficult in the way that it takes time to render a single image, which might be a bottleneck still, but I am going to switch to some RTX 30 cars, maybe 40s in the near future. All of this needs to be executable through my iPad, which I incidentally don't have around here. I sometimes am tired or have been working for long times, and I know that I can read like you know, special relativity or quantum mechanics I have here as well, that I can do some mental gymnastics when I'm in my bed and just relaxing or taking a nap or a break. So I could write some code maybe, or do the functions that I need to be doing, or monitor as I'm taking a rest or something like that, or when I'm in the morning I want to wake up, I want to, I have Wallow, this doesn't work exactly, or it isn't doing what I want it to do. It should be able to start up my computer over LAN, which it didn't do, and it can't find one of my other computers. I haven't checked the third computer, which I would like to be capable of doing. I would like to just be in my bed, have my iPad open, and then start my day by turning on all my PCs, having everything be done for me in a certain sense. If that is even necessary, I'm probably at some point, I'm already leaving my computers running day and night at certain times. But sometimes if there's like nothing to be done, or it doesn't have anything, it's not necessarily necessary to keep it running when it doesn't need to. The file uploaders, so Facebook uploads, Instagram doesn't seem to have an API anymore. Most of them do, but I don't think it's really that hard to just be capable of doing that through a browser extension that I would script or something like that. PyT, VQGAN plus Clip is some stuff that I'm working on or looking into. I am using and implementing Deepdream as a process for file optimization and making files that are blurry look more realistic usually mainly when they are already kind of semi-illustrative or illustration-y. But there's some problems with that, is that it doesn't necessarily recognize, or it might sometimes take something that has been rendered in a VQGAN or in PT or PyT, that it what it does is that it doesn't know that something is, for example, a diamond or a piece of glass, and then it adds that swirly deep dreamy thing in there. Overall it knows that it what how to fill something in and make it cohesive and make it look sleek and nice, better than before, but it's not on point. It doesn't have that oomph, that like tiny little bit of, or maybe it does, it does give that, but it doesn't. It sometimes reduces the realism on things that need to be an entire, but sometimes it doesn't even do that. I don't exactly know why it's sometimes not doing. It has to do something with detail and where the noise has been dispersed. Sometimes it can like have a large area that is slick and smooth where it didn't overtake it, but I think it's sometimes just a random problem. It might be that if I iterate through it 5 times, one of the images that it has been through, and iterate I mean as a separate new deep dream, and then take a look, that sometimes it might have actually done that because it's just a random problem rather than a consequent problem. I don't know if that's the right word. I know the Photoshop. I have a Photoshop problem where I want to use the filter gallery and use it in batch mode, but I can't, which is one of the ways that I wanted to optimize images, by using the filter gallery and finding some way that a structured filter gallery batch edit thing would create a an image that is optimized from a not so optimized image. I know some of the features are in Premiere or After Effects. I am going to look into that, but not everything that is, I think, in Photoshop is in After Effects or Premiere. I have a script that can batch through files in Photoshop. The problem with that batching through files in Photoshop is that when it's executed, it takes up a lot of RAM. So there is a limit of how many files you can open, and it can only do it with layers. So I might look into what that does actually, and whether or not I can fire and execute a filter function on top of images and somehow alter that script and have that script maybe execute once a couple of files is opened, but then there's the problem of continually needing to go back and forth between opening files, and it's not the worst problem, but I'm pretty sure if it could just iterate through files and then apply it and then go to the next and then just keep doing that it would be a lot faster than that it has to. Maybe, I don't know if I can use Photoshop modules outside the Photoshop, or not have to entirely fire Photoshop in its entirety without, so that it would not take up space and not that it uses a lot of CPU. Although it does when it's like, well, for example, when you crop it, there is sometimes like but that's usually a problem that only arises when you have a large amount of layers in there. And then, yeah, get some robot arms. I need some robot arms, some KUKA robot arms in my house, and then build stuff. I need to also go towards building stuff. I just have it so I could just sit here and then have it all do a bunch of stuff for me in my house, and then I could toy with those and create a bunch of other stuff. I also know that I can see the structure, because I draw a lot. I can see the structure of Photoshop files that I make, and there's like always a rhythm to it that I could train or learn the computer to do over and over again. And then there's an entirely other pipeline thing that I'm trying to work on and do, which will be part of the process that I'm working on now. But that's one of those things that I'm currently I don't know, I've been rambling. I don't know if it's any good, but then I also might want to teach this in some way or another. I don't know if I want to teach it or I do need to make a living though. I need to upload. It's getting really boring to like cut everything all the time, and this manual stuff that is like taking up all of my time that I need to do every so many days. I want to get that part of it out. I'm gonna leave it at that for now.